And joining me now is Randy Leininger. And so all you guys watch the show all the time, and you know that we have Dr. Bratland and his commercials and who he is. He sponsors us. And we used to have one on there, Randy. Welcome to the show. I should welcome you before I start doing this all together. But you know Michael, and everybody in our audience knows Michael. And they go, here comes this next commercial, because he's not really afraid to do anything, you know. And when I've had 2 crowns, and my first one was put on by one of those dental companies, like, you know, that there's 10,000 of them and you're a number. And that one didn't go so well. Then I had my second one put on, and my wife's had one put on by Dr. Bratland. And I'll tell you what, it feels like the other teeth in my mouth. It doesn't, there's not this noticeable difference. I mean, it takes a while to get used to just having something in there that's different, but you run your tongue along it and you do not feel. So what is Just Crowns? What do you guys, how do you do this? I know there's some company secrets we don't want to talk about, but you know what they are, so you won't do that. But kind of tell me how you got this idea for this Just Crowns thing.
Well, Rick, I've been in the dental industry for about 25 years. So quite a while. And what happened was I was doing some, we call it practice management consulting. So you work with doctors and dental practices to help them run a more efficient practice. And when COVID hit, dental practices, like so many businesses, were really restricted on what they could do, who they could see. And they had to trim costs, right? Because I mean, we had trying to keep afloat, keep their employees with paychecks and things like that. And so the consulting business obviously becomes a little bit slower to consult on business when everything's locked down. So
you're consulting at that point on how to keep your doors open.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of took that break that all of the lockdowns permitted, and I actually signed up with an MBA program at Boise State University, and it was an online program. So the pandemic didn't really affect, you know, this program, but what I was able to do was just kind of lean into that as a full-time job. So finish it in a year. And as part of an MBA program, you do a capstone project at the end. And so I set up this idea based on my experience and the things that we learned in the MBA program. So what would a dental lab look like if it started with its purpose being the patient? So we're start from the patient and that crown that you get, and then work backwards from there and make a magic wand type of experience.
Because what's the, like, with a lot of crowns and a lot of dentists, the problem is you go in, you get the tooth ground down, they put a little temporary on, which is irritating as hell. And then you wait 2, 3, 4 weeks for the real crown to come in. So you're getting used to this crown, then they pop that one off, you put a new crown on, and now you got to get used to that one. So if you're coming from the patient standpoint, you're trying to go, I got to make that time between crown temporary and crown permanent way shorter. And that's what you did.
Exactly, as short as possible. So what we said is the technology that allows us to do this, you know, so many people know when they go to the dentist, I think the technical term for it is the tray of goop that gets put in their mouth.
That was my first.
That's called impression material. And so what happens is they put that tray of goop in your mouth, and then they have to mail that out to a dental lab, or somebody has to come and pick it up. Then what they would do is they would pour that up with plaster, stone, that had to solidify. Then they take it out, then they trim it, and then they could go into a digital process at that point, or they might go into what we call an analog process, where there was a bunch of a lot of other steps. And so you had all that time to get through that. You were working off of copies of copies of copies. You know, from being a broadcaster, the difference between copying analog tape over and over and over again versus a digital recording. Right. Same type of thing with this. So what we do,
the quality slips for people that don't. is every time you have a new generation in analog, you lose a generation. So it's getting worse and worse whereas digital, it's perfect every time.
Yeah, it's a 1 or a 0, right? It is right. Or it isn't. So when you went to Dr. Bratland, you didn't get the tray of goop. He used this, his ray gun, which is called an intraoral scanner.
So this is our scanner. This is one of the most state-of-the-art scanners made. So we have a patient here. I'm gonna put your head back here. It's really cool because we just scan it instead of taking that goopy impression that you hate when it makes you gag. We just use this. So open, and we just start scanning, and you hear that little right there, and see how it's coming up on the screen. So I'm starting to get a 3D image of the tooth.
And what that does is it uses a series of different wavelengths of light and things, and it creates a 3D map of that tooth in your mouth in the prep, and it captures all of that digitally. So that's why you didn't get the tray of goop.
And so and for people that haven't had this done yet, it's just almost like a toothbrush.
The lab can make me a crown to be identical, which is actually really nice if the person has a denture or like a partial, a night guard, something that they don't want to have to change after they get a new crown. So right here, so if you look at this, and it didn't take that long at all. Not super uncomfortable, but see that? There's the tooth. Now obviously I didn't prep the tooth in any way, but had I done a crop prep, I would scan that. I would prep the tooth. I would scan the prep tooth. We'd send it within, usually I'll call the lab, and if I don't tell them verbally I want something like change the crown within like 10-15 minutes, they're starting to mill it. It's that quick. It's Just Crowns is in Boise. Everything's done there from American Parts, and I get it back in a couple days, and it's fantastic. Just an awesome fit. So it's pretty simple. We do this for night guards. We do this for Invisalign trays. We use the scanner for everything.
That you can see every nook and cranny in that crown or that tooth. So that's how it gets. That's how you make. And then you were telling me the reason the dentist is so important is because one, he's the one grinding down all your tooth and everything. But then he also instructs you, Dr. Bratland, or other people who work with you, then instruct you saying, okay, but Rick's got this one section back here. We need to be careful of that. So kind of explain to people how that works. Because I think that fascinated me when you were telling me that.
So this is one of the cool things about the digital. When Dr. Bratland, if he was using the tray of goop, he would be looking at that tray of goop, probably with his magnification, under a magnifying glass, but he's kind of looking at that reverse image and he's saying, did we get everything? Not. But when he does that digital thing, and you brought it up, you said you can look at it from every angle. Yeah. Well, not only are you looking at it from every angle, but he's looking at your tooth now as if it's the size of a pumpkin.
The midterm elections did not turn out the way many of us had hoped. So what can we do about it? Support local businesses that prioritize freedom of speech, tougher crime laws, and values that support a healthy community, not the same old song and dance that's gotten us nowhere. Even though my wife and I moved to Montana, we still come back to Eugene to see Dr. Michael Bratland at Chris Dental. He says what he believes and puts his money where his values are by supporting those brave enough to push for change. And best of all, he and his team are just awesome. So if you've been thinking about changing dentists or you just don't have one, you need to go to Chris Dental. Call them today and they'll do their best to see you today.
It's bigger than your head. So he can see details through the digital process that just aren't there. Then what he can do is when he sends that to me with the push of a button, it's like coming like an email. It's the same thing. It's that quick. But he can attach his notes to that. He can mark it on that digitally. So he can give me instructions, just things that would be impossible to do with the tray of goop. What that allows me to do is get all of that feedback from the dentist, Dr. Bratland in your case, in a precise way, and then make something that's perfect to send back.
And so you do that through the flip of a switch. He sends that to you. How long does it take? How fast can you make that crown?
So, for example, Dr. Bratland, he sends us this, what we call a digital impression. With that digital impression, we don't have to pour up stone. We don't have to wait for anything. We can actually get that designed in about 15 minutes. Okay. And then we send it to the milling machine. The milling machine carves it out, also in about 15 minutes. And then what we do is the material that it's milled out of is called zirconia. And it has to go through a process called sintering.
Okay.
And it's kind of the opposite of baking cookies. When you bake cookies, they expand. When you bake zirconia, it contracts because it's crystallizing, becoming hard, becoming dense. Like think about turning a piece of coal into a diamond.
Right.
Heat and pressure, a diamond it shrinks. It's much more dense than the coal, the carbon it's made out of, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of process.
That's what gives it the strength and that hardness.
Yes. Now we do, our preferred thing is to do this overnight. Okay. So a slower process, crock pot versus a microwave. Okay. We can sinter it in as short as 90 minutes if we needed to in a real emergency. So conceivably we could get a scan in 15 minutes, or design it in 15 minutes, mill it in 15 minutes, sinter it for 90 minutes. So you're talking, you could get something back to the doctor in 4 hours in a crazy scenario.
But that's not normal. Normally it's just within a couple of days or a week.
Yeah. So we never have it in lab. Like when Dr. Bratland sends us something, it's now we're in Boise, Idaho. He's in Eugene. So we get it on Monday. It's in the mail to him on Tuesday, and it's usually at his practice on Thursday.
Wow.
And if he needs to, we can overnight it on Tuesday. So it's back at his practice on Wednesday.
So why is that a game changer, Randy? I mean, because it really is.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people will say, hey, well, my dentist does the crown in the same day. And that's true. There's what they call a single appointment procedure where they do crowns in office, and they have a little milling machine in office and they're able to do this kind of in that short time frame that I talked to you about. So in that scenario, they might prepare the tooth, say, hey, Rick, we'll see you in a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours. You come back and you get that crown. It's a different material. Okay. And that material is very good in some scenarios. And it's not the best in others. So what we saw in the dental industry, and when I put this project together, there was kind of what we call the 2-hour crowns. And then there were the 2-week crowns. Well, that's a really big space in between.
Right.
And so we've just added the 2-day crown into that space.
So in your opinion, you're getting a better material than the 2-hour crown, but you don't have to wait the 2 weeks to get that better material.
Yeah. So it's
the crown. You don't want
a stronger material.
Stronger, because you do not want to do this again. You know what I mean? As the crownee, as the person who's been crowned, I do not want to go through that process more than I have to.
No. And I ended up with my first crown this last summer.
Well,
I had a tooth break. Yeah. And so I'm not only the owner of Just Crowns, I'm also a customer, like the guy from the Hair Club for Men commercials, you remember?
Yeah.
So anyway, I got my first crown, and a doctor here in Boise did it for me. He was a great dentist, but I had called Dr. Bratland about it, and he just said, just get the crown on as fast as you can, because the shorter that time that you're in that temporary crown, we reduce the chances of that tooth needing a root canal later.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if you think about, if I needed stitches and I put a Band-Aid on something and then went to the doctor two weeks later and got my stitches, that temporary crown is really a Band-Aid in terms of dentistry. Okay. And so what we're trying to do is shorten the amount of time the Band-Aid's on there and get that tooth permanently protected again.
See, I had no idea. And I know, like, when my wife had her last one put on, we live in Montana, but we always have Dr. Bratlin. We go back for dentist appointments in Oregon because we love him. And we know what he's going to, I mean, when somebody sticks that wand in your mouth and you see a digital mold rather than the goop, not the goop tray, it feels like prehistoric times versus the modern age. And I know Dr. Bratlin spent a lot of money on that little wand and those tools, what we might want to say as toys, but those very valuable tools that cost a lot of money, which is why the cost of crowns are. And when you see what they do, I mean, they're basically grinding your tooth down to nothing and not making it hurt, So, but I had no idea that temporary could then cause problems on down the road. So Kathy came, she got the mold done. We were going to the beach for a week, came back, it was ready. She had it on. And it was like, so within a time we were spending in Oregon, she could have a whole crown, everything done. And it was there before we were there, I mean, and ready to go. So I know you love Dr. Bratlin, but you do provide crowns for other dentists as well. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. So the bulk of our business right now, just by proximity, has been is in Boise and the surrounding area here. Our furthest doctor away is in Arkansas, from Boise. But he's still, even though we're here in Boise, similar type scenario to Dr. Bratlin. He sends us something on Monday. We put it in the mail. I think it takes an extra day to get to Arkansas. But it's still faster than he's getting it, from other labs. And he likes the fact that we use American-made zirconia. Zirconia comes from all over the world. And when we built the company, we really tried to focus on everything that we could being done as close to the patient as possible, using American-made materials, working with technology that either came from the United States or came from allies. Just because a real belief that anything that we can do to strengthen American manufacturing and also to put our products and our care closer to our neighbors is important.
Well, and then you have control over the quality and the quantity of that product so that it's not coming from some lab in China. This is coming from someplace where, and if something goes wrong with that, you're going to take care of it. And you don't have to go back to company B to say, hey, how come this didn't work and blah, blah, blah. You've got everything right there to do it. So are you guys is it more cost effective to do what you do for the dentist and everything?
There's always, I think we are definitely, I like to say we're a high value product. So most of the type of restorations we do probably cost the dentist about 50% more than we charge. There are definitely people out there who do it for less than us, but there's nobody who's really at our price point for the dentist and our turnaround time, and really our quality too. I think our quality in the world of dentistry, it's called a drop-in crown. And what should happen is when you go back for that crown, when the doctor sits down to put it in, that shouldn't be an hour appointment with him grinding on the tooth and all of this stuff. They call them drop-ins. So he should put that in, a little bit of adjustment, you're touching your bite, and you're like, yep, it's good to go. And that's another advantage of the digital is we dial preferences in to the 100th of a micron.
Wow.
Is what we're working with.
And Randy and I were going to grab some video and stuff, but you have been so busy So obviously this is working, but Randy gets on and he's just like, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe my week. So it's been so busy that unbelievable. So it is taking off. It obviously is working because, again, you started with the customer and worked your way the other direction rather than starting with, here's the product. Now, how do we make it fit the customer? You take the customer. What's going to be best for the customer? That's fast, really good product, not having to go in to have it redone again, hopefully, and better chances at that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's definitely work out there. We're not the only lab that Dr. Bratland uses, and there's really no way that we could be, because different patients have different needs.
Right.
And what we focused on is we're taking care of what we call functional dentistry. So our thing is to get that tooth protected, get you chewing again as fast as possible.
Wow.
And
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so that's been the whole focus of our business. We don't offer, 32 flavors, right? We got vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. And we don't have waffle cones. We just got cake cones. We just tell people like, hey, but you're going to be like, this is the best ice cream cone I've ever had.
Oh, can you tell one more thing? Just, this is kind of off topic. Well, it's not. It's about teeth. But you and I were talking when we were setting this all up, and you were telling me about the color of teeth and how you can tell the color of someone's teeth by their eye color, the white in their eyes. Can you explain? Because you have people coming to you, and Randy was saying he has people coming, they want the whitest of white teeth, but it's like, then it looks kind of plastic like some of the Hollywood stars we see, and it doesn't look right. So how do you judge what color to make the different teeth?
Well, so Rick, first of all, one of the things that I love in the United States is liberty. And if you want blazing white teeth, I want to deliver that to you. I've done a lot of traveling around the world, and in Europe, if you have an elderly person who comes in who wants like teeth that aren't age appropriate, the dentist will say no. And so one of the things that I do like here in the United States is if you want the brightest, whitest, glow in the dark teeth, we'll still help you get that. But as a general rule of thumb, someone's teeth look dark if their teeth are darker than the whites of their eyes. Okay. So, and you'll notice this if you start looking at it. The whites of our eyes between people varies quite a bit. Right. And it, fair complexion, blonde hair, darker complexion, olive, whatever it is, we have some variance there. And so if the teeth are sort of at that same brightness as the whites of their eyes, it looks like, oh, that person has a bright, healthy smile. Okay. If it's brighter than that, it looks like, oh, that's a really bright thing. If it's darker than that, it looks dark. But that's kind of how our, the things that we notice, Bausch and Lomb, the eye company, they did a survey with men and women. This was years ago. You can find online, but they said, what did people notice first about members of the opposite sex? And the first thing that we actually look at are eyes. And the second thing that we look at are teeth.
Isn't that weird?
And that's kind of what we're tuned in to see if it's like, if we're evaluating this person as being healthy.
Huh. See, I don't think we as human beings, as a general public, understand the teeth part as much as how important it really is. You know what I mean? I always thought it was just me because my wife, like people go, Rick, you have such good eye contact with people. But honest, Randy, I never look at people's eyes. I look at their teeth. But then they think I'm looking at their eyes. And I think it was just as a kid, I was insecure about that. And so I learned that you could kind of fake them out by just looking at their mouth. But I can tell people by their mouth. I mean, I'll look away and my wife will go, what? And I'll say, did you notice how clean their teeth? I mean, it's just no. And I'm going, oh, because I'm watching that. But I think it is a real good reason to pay attention to it. Plus, I don't think many people realize how much other health problems can come from bad teeth. I mean, your teeth can cause a lot of other health problems in your body that you would never think about. So it really is important to take care of them. And when you crack a tooth and break it, you don't have a whole lot of choices, you know?
Yeah. No, dental pain, our teeth are really interesting. So one of the companies that I was involved with, we worked with a company in the UK, and the British government fought us. We sold tooth whitening. That doctors do the tooth whitening for you. The UK was really fighting us on the tooth whitening because they were saying that it was only cosmetic. It didn't serve any type of a medical purpose. And so with their regulations over there, again, there's just all this government of what's allowed on people to whiten their teeth or not. And part of the argument that we made was the teeth provide more than just biting and chewing. Right. You even see on some of our, like in Oregon, for example, I think they're exploring right now doing some more orthodontics for folks who are, from underprivileged, or they're kind of can't afford right. orthodontics, but adding that some coverage, because you think about someone's self-esteem.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's hard for, say, a young person, a child who sees the Billy Bob teeth, the joke teeth in the store that are dark and snaggly and pointing every direction. And then they don't have necessarily the opportunity to have a quote unquote normal smile.
Right.
And so if you think about it, the teeth are really a complex part of our health, both in terms of what we can have diet and even in terms of our self-esteem and how we feel and how we're perceived by others.
So they really are kind of a mental health, a confidence builder, or something that can tear you down. So it really is important to take care of them, especially at a young age. Like my kids didn't have any cavities and my mouth is full of silver, but because I grew up in the 50s, and everybody I know in the 50s grew up in the 50s and early 60s. You didn't, we didn't have the same teeth care that we have today. So,
yeah. Well, Rick, we had a gentleman 2 weeks ago who actually, he lived in Hawaii, but he had an accident and fell and broke out the front four. I mean, snapped him off, jagged. But this person, in their profession, appearance, very important. So he called a doctor from here in Boise, from Hawaii on Monday, arrived on a plane on Wednesday. Okay. The doctor did the crown preps, emailed the file to us digitally. We returned the case to him on Friday morning. The doctor seeded the crowns, and the gentleman was back on the plane on Saturday and at work Monday, and not dealing with no teeth.
And that's, in that case too, pain. I mean, I'm sure that's very painful, and to have that covered up and back into action, you're going again. Randy Leininger, that was like, for crowning, that was like, I learned a ton. And thank you for taking the time to talk with us. And Dr. Bratlin wanted me to, he says, you got to get Randy on there, because it is, I think when people learn the technology, it's a lot. When you have a doctor's hands in your mouth for as long as it is, you want that to not be very long, because it's very uncomfortable. And when, the only part that was uncomfortable was when Bratlin had to, grind down my tooth. But the return visit was not like the return visit on my first crown, which was, it felt like we were doing this all over again. And so I'm glad you had this project. I'm finding all kinds of positive things out of the reaction to COVID. And look, you got an MBA and you figured out a new way to do things, and the rest of us are being blessed by that. So we appreciate that.
Well, it's very, very, very satisfying. To just help people get their teeth back sooner. I mean, our future looking, we'd love to be able to do, for example, dentures in the same type of time frame. So that's technology that we're exploring, because it's terrible to be without your teeth for weeks.
Yeah, especially with something like that. Yeah, my dad was in an accident when he was a kid, had to have all of his teeth pulled, and then he had to wait to get the dentures made. You know what I mean? And what do you do? So, Randy, thank you again. Thanks for being with us. I appreciate your time, man. Oh,
thanks for having me, Rick.
Hey, if there's doctors out there, dentists out there who want to get a hold of you, what do they need to do?
They just, the easiest way, there's contact information on our website, which is justcrowns.com. JustCrowns.com. Just Crowns.
All right. Thanks, Randy. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.